Well, good morning, everyone. Thomas Montgomery here. It's a beautiful Tuesday morning, August 16th, 2022. We get together with our distribution partners most weekday mornings at this time to talk strategies, share success stories, talk techniques, but mostly we're here to support you. We've had, I guess, really over the past months, maybe years, but certainly months, a number of you ask if we couldn't provide some sort of package for those very early stage entrepreneurs, essentially those who have not even set up their entity yet. Because when you look at our other programming, whether it be the SBA Express or the access to capital, all of those really are under the assumption that the client has an entity or will create an entity. So we haven't really gotten into this space, but after multiple requests, we have this outline, and that's all it is. There's nowhere anyone can sign up for it. It's not on any website. But today's goal is to get feedback from each of you. So consider yourself on our advisory board, and we'd like to get feedback from each of you on this concept as we decide, do we want to roll it out, and do we need to make any changes? So put your advisory hat on, and let's dig in. So the topic today is an early peek at this concept called the new startup business package. So what's the background of the topic? Well, the startup business package is meant to be a turnkey resource for entrepreneurs who are looking to form a new business that is well positioned for fast funding. So you notice that there's two elements: forming the business and positioning it correctly, because often we're seeing small business owners start a business often with a lack of understanding of what should be done, and then we have a lot to clean up afterwards. We obviously worked with SBDC advisors and SCORE mentors to put together exactly what's needed, and this is a program that essentially you could take out to the SCORE chapters in your area, the SBDC offices, and get referrals from them, but we'll talk about that another time. We wanted it to have a very low price point so it didn't keep people from being able to participate, and we were able to secure a grant subsidy to cover a big portion of it, which we'll go through the dollars and cents in a moment. We will assign each client a business paralegal to work with, so they'll have qualified assistance. And then maybe best of all, you can earn an easy $250 for each person that you refer over. So there's the background. Now let's get into what's needed to set up a business properly. Because if you and I are trying to provide a solution to the problem, we need to first define what the problem is. And so the problem is many individuals do not know how to set up properly a business so it's credible and positioned for funding. So that's the problem. The solution that you and I are talking about, which we'll go through more in a moment, is the startup business package. But let's come to agreement on facts. What is it that's needed to set up a business properly? What's the minimum? Now, are there more things? Of course, but what's the minimum to get a business set up properly? Well, I think what you and I agree upon that most of the world overlooks is the first step to forming a new business is not getting an EIN. It is not going and filing the formation documents with the Secretary of State. It's neither of those. Those are subsequent steps. The first step we should have is to have a unique commercial address. Because if we don't start with that, then we're in cleanup mode afterwards. And cleaning up some of the databases like Dun & Bradstreet can be very painful. So we're going to start with a unique commercial address. And you'll see that we're going to provide clients that free of no charge. But regardless if they have it or if they want to use our free address. Now, what do you and I know? We know that an address doesn't just mean an address. Lenders do not see a post office box as credible. So that's bad. Lenders do not see shared virtual addresses where you have the same suite number as other people. That's bad. Lenders do not see that a residential address is credible. That's bad. So that's why we call it, they need a unique commercial address. As you can assume, we're going to build that in at no cost to this package. But regardless of if a client wants to participate in this package or not, that's where they need to start with. Now, that address may change as time goes along. Many businesses in the small town I live in, Walmart has moved 3 times, or twice, I guess. They're in their 3rd location. So small businesses as well as large businesses may change addresses. That can happen, but we need to start with a credible address. Excuse me, fighting the COVID here. Does anyone have any questions on why this is needed? So we're not talking about our solution yet. We're going to get to that down here at the bottom of the page. Right now, we're trying to come to agreement. Do we all agree that for a business to be set up properly, they need to start with a commercial address? Does anyone disagree? And you can respond into the Q&A, the question and answer of Zoom. It's like a chat. Does anyone disagree that that's the starting point? Even before they flush through their business plan, even before anything else, if we're wanting to set up a business properly, we need to have the address, because we can't do any of the subsequent steps without an address. And if we use a different address, then we're in cleanup mode, which could put us at risk of not getting it cleaned up properly. Everybody good? Alfred says yes. Bernard says yes. Everybody good? Okay, moving on. The second thing that's needed to set up a business properly, regardless if it's within our package or otherwise, is then we need to file with the Secretary of State. So some people are confused. When you form a business entity, it is not filed through the IRS or the federal government. It's filed with a Secretary of State. Now, to no surprise, there's a Secretary of State of each state. And so the fees can vary, the process can vary, but that is how we give birth to a new business entity. So we're not talking about a sole proprietorship or a DBA. We're talking about an LLC, C Corp, or S Corp. Now, we're heavy advocates of C Corps, but that's a aside. So then we're going to file. We need to file with the Secretary of State once we have a commercial address. So many people do this backwards, and they will skip this step. That's bad. So we need that step first. Then we go to the Secretary of State. Now we need to go get our EIN, which is free, fast, and simple. And that is getting that unique identifier. So often we'll see that clients will get their EIN before they file with the Secretary of State, let alone having their address figured out. And that's horrible. I mean, why do you not, if you're pregnant, or your wife or your significant other or anyone you know is pregnant, do you go file for a social security number before the child is birthed? No, because until the child's birth, we don't have the birth certificate. We don't know exactly what the child's name is going to be, so on. So no, we don't go get an EIN before we file with the Secretary of State, because what if the name's not available, right? That'd be horrible. Now we're back to cleaning up. We want to avoid cleanup. Cleanup is painful, and it's an unwise use of your time and my time. All right, now, once we have an address, we can go file with the Secretary of State, we can get our EIN. Now we want to immediately go get our profile cleaned up. And there's more than Dun & Bradstreet. The big three are Dun & Bradstreet, Experian Business, and Equifax Business. But for simplicity, we'll look at Dun & Bradstreet. Now, what will happen is if you do nothing, let's say that you did these 3 steps, 1, 2, 3, did it with us, did it on your own, doesn't matter. What's going to happen? Dun & Bradstreet monitors, because this is public information. Once this happens or this happens, it's public information. So Dun & Bradstreet will create a profile, most likely, will create a profile for this newly created business. And almost always it's horrible, it's inaccurate, it's incomplete. So now we've got this public record that's available for the world to see that's all jacked up. Industry code might be wrong, address might be wrong, phone number might be off, all kinds of things can be screwed up. And if we're trying to position the business to access capital, we need those things to look good, right? Because that's where the lenders or extenders of credit are going to check. So that's the 4th thing that needs to be done to set up a business properly, is make sure the profile is correct with Dun & Bradstreet. In some cases, there'll be no profile. So then we'll need to get a profile set up, but in many cases the profile will be there. It'll just be all jacked up because it's pulling from public information. If we don't actively seek to improve our profile, it'll remain jacked up and negatively impact our access to capital. Then we want to go ahead and create a positive business credit profile, because if our goal, remember, we're going to go back to our goal. What was our goal? To help clients form a new business that is well positioned for fast funding. And so we want to go ahead and start adding trade lines right away to that brand new business. So we can demonstrate, yes, our business is real, it's credible, and we'll do what we say that we'll do. We'll pay our bills as agreed. So does anyone have any constructive criticism on these 5 elements of what's needed to set up a business properly? Are there more things we could talk about? Websites, phone numbers, all of that. Sure, but this is mission critical right here. Okay, and Jeremy asked about purchasing a shelf corporation. So some people will go purchase a shelf corporation. I've not seen it be that effective. And I know people that sell it will disagree. So I'll yield to them. I'm sure they know something that I don't know. But like we were working with a client just this morning. Client's name's Tiffany. I'll leave her last name out. The client's name's Tiffany, wonderful woman. So Tiffany has this business that's over 2 years old, has not generated any income. And she's in our SBA Express program. So here we are trying to go to the lender to explain, well, for 2 years, we haven't figured out how to earn a freaking dime. But you know what? We've got an epiphany now. You give us a bunch of money and we'll go make money and we'll pay you back. I mean, that's a bit of a stretch. And it's like for 2 years, you could not freaking figure out how to generate any income. And now all of a sudden you want to borrow 6 figures and that's the answer. That's a little sketchy, So could it work? It might work, but that's a little sketchy. So Lon brings up a good point that yes, you're right. So we do need to open a business bank account, and you're absolutely correct. And so Lon is correct. Opening a business bank account is also part of what's needed. Absolutely correct, Lon. Don't disagree at all. Jeanette asked, the address, should we have a lease? Yes, because some of these lenders will not just ask, do you have an address, but give us a copy of your lease. It's the whole trust but verify, right? I know for our company, when we first got our SBA loan, our first SBA loan, that there was some issue with that at that point, we were in a co-working space when we very first started. Now, we leased a unique standalone office in this co-working structure. So, had 4 walls and it was private and locked. But because that address was flagged as a co-working space, we had trouble. So we had to actually present a lease to get that loan approved. And so, Jeanette, you're absolutely correct. In many cases, we'll need to provide a commercial address to the lender. Okay, so what we've covered so far is an early peek at the new startup business loan package. Startup business package. This is not available yet. Our goal today is to bounce it off you, our advisory team. We've got Terrence on here, CPA. We got Tony, who's been with us for a couple of years. We got so many bright minds. We got Joseph on here, been with us, I think, 3 years. So many of you have been around a long time. Alfred has done some big deals in business and finance. So this is where we're looking for feedback from each of you before we move forward and implement. Okay, so we've covered the background and we've covered what's needed in addition to the bank account, which is correct. And of course, we can't provide a bank account because we're not a bank, but we can facilitate that. So now let's go ahead and get, without the drum roll, and get to the point of what we include in the startup package, the pricing, and what's in it for you. Okay? So what's included in the startup package is designed to be a solution to the problem that we identified. We want to provide them we will provide them a unique commercial address at no charge. Now, the address will be set up in a state with no corporate income tax, so that'll save them money. It'll provide the credibility to pursue funding under the EIN without personal guarantees, because that's one of the purposes of a properly set up business. And of course, mail forwarding, because it's not a physical address that someone will go to, but it is a true physical unique address. So that's the first thing that we're providing in this startup business package, because it's needed. Any questions on that before we move on? Okay. Second thing is we will file with the Secretary of State and we'll pay the filing fees. So if you have any questions or comments, just go ahead and type it into the Q&A, please. Type it into the Q&A. It's like a chat function. So the second thing is we're going to help them form the entity and we're going to pay the filing fees. We're going to help them obtain an EIN, again, at no charge. We're going to help them build out their business credit to get at least 5,000 to 10,000 of business credit very quickly, again, at no charge to the client. Why is that relevant? Because we want to create a positive credit profile. And this is huge. This is huge because what you and I know, a lot of people overlook. So let's say that you and I were invited by the local high school principal and come over and talk to seniors that are starting their senior year this year, school starting now or recently has in most school districts around the country. And the principal says, okay, we want you, Alfred, or we want you, Lon, or we want you, Perry, or Shondell, or whomever, to talk a little bit about credit to these seniors because they're either recently turned 18 or they're about to turn 18 and they don't know what to do. Well, the first thing we'd say is, well, credit is a historical reflection of if you did what you promised to do. Did you pay your bills as agreed? So the absence of credit does not mean good credit. Good credit means the presence of positive trade lines and the absence of negative history. So we need to add positive trade lines. So I can tell you personally what I did when my older children, I have one still at home, but my older children, when they turned 18, we hopped in the car, we drove over to the credit union. Frankly, at that time I was a teacher, so we went to the teachers credit union, and we immediately took out a secured loan for every one of them, $1,000. And then we turned around and took the proceeds from that and put $1,000 on a secured credit card. So now all of a sudden, the day after they turned 18, they had 2 trade lines starting to report, an installment and a revolving. And of course, we had the payments come out of the account. So it was perfect payment history. So that's how it works for people. I know that's not what we're talking about, but that's, I think, good backdrop. So how does it work for businesses? Well, we need to open trade lines. We need to make a purchase. We need to pay as agreed, and it needs to be reported to the bureaus. Otherwise, we will not have positive business credit. So again, what's the rule? An absence of positive credit does not make for a good credit score, does not make for a good borrower. So what we're going to do is help them open trade lines immediately so we can start to build that business credit profile. So that is included in the startup package. And so that's, this is credit, uses of credit that they can use for their business. It's real. We're not talking about buying trade lines that just are posted if they're not real. These are primary trade lines that they can use. And then also, and lastly, we're going to provide them geographic access to the Chapman Fund. Frankly, a few years ago, I didn't even know what the heck the Chapman Fund was. But if you don't know, you need to know. So at a high level, there are taxing authorities that, in other words, take taxes from the community, and then they put funds together to give that out to small businesses to start and grow. But it's tied geographically to the area, right? So if they take tax money from homeowners or business owners and property owners in a given area, then only businesses in that same area can access that funding. Kind of makes sense. It's equitable, right? So this is not a national program, it's a regional program. So one of the things that we provide in the Startup Business Package is geographic access to the Chapman Fund. Now, this isn't an end all and be all. It goes from a minimum of 30, max is at 250,000. It's fine for startups, but the hard max is 250. So if the client needs more than 250, we can use this, and we often combine this with SBA loans. But the Chapman Fund will only go up to $250,000. No matter how handsome you are, no matter how smart you are, 250 is the cap. So we got to understand that. Long repayment terms, in other words, it's not a short-term loan with high payments or high interest, allows for a wide variety of uses. And again, we don't have to go through a bank for this. It's tax supported. So then it gets us to the pricing. So the normal pricing for the Startup Business Package is $2,500, which is fair. But once we apply the grant, that reduces it in half. So then for a client to enroll in the startup business package to get the value proposition listed, they're paying $1,250, of which $250 comes to you. So let me shrink this down and let's dig into your questions that you have. And we want the hard questions, the constructive criticism. When you look at this, if you want to call BS on something, excuse me, do so. If there's something you think we should do better or different, if you think the price should go up so you make more money, let us know. If you think we priced it too cheap, that's what we've heard most often, but let us know what you think should change. All right, so Nikki says, can she use the commercial address on applications in the future? Sure, yeah. So we can provide this to each of you. That really wasn't the point. More so is to get your feedback today, and as we prepare to launch this in the near future, this will be a new resource that you could have. I know a couple of you, and I think it was Frankie, but forgive me, Frankie, if I got it wrong, but a couple of you said that you want to go out into the marketplace and really stimulate the development of new businesses and help create new businesses, not only just help those that are already in existence. Well, this is a great way to do that and to monetize it. You could speak to them individually, you could do small groups, you could work through churches, whatever you want. But if you're making $250 a pop, this is a pretty easy transaction. You don't have any implementation burden afterwards. So you refer them in, they enroll, you get paid. Super simple. All right, so who has questions, comments, constructive criticism on this? Nikki has a great question. She asked about the trade lines. So let's go back to that. And those are here. She asks how long they'll report. They're permanent. They're primary trade lines and they're permanent. Now, when I say that, I guess if someone doesn't use the trade line after a certain number of years, it'll no longer report. But I don't know the answer to that specifically. But these are permanent primary trade lines that will report. Thank you, Nikki. Lon's asking timeline. Well, so if a client were to enroll, we're going to be able to provide the address same day. We need to find out the name that the customer wants, make sure it's available, and then we can file that, and that's on our budget. And so typically that's turning around in 3 to 5 days. We've had some that process same day. We have an account with the Secretary of State because of the volume we do. So let's say that this is day 1. This is by day 5. We can get this done as soon as the entity is set up, day 5, and we can start accessing business credit right away. So, I mean, we're about a week process to get those documents or those steps done. So let's say about a week. Nikki says it's awesome. Thank you. And this wasn't our goal to bring this package to the market. It's just we've heard multiple times that it's needed, and therefore, and some of you are providing this service, right? And so if you're providing this service, then fine, use your service, not ours. We're not here to compete with you. Jeremy asked about the payout. So the client will pay the $1,250, and then we're paying out the $250 next day. So fast, next day, we'll wire it over to you. So client pays day 1, you're paid day 2. So that's the time. They pay fast. Frankie asked, is this the same as the SBA Express loan program? No, this is very different. Notice, Frankie, nothing about this talks about applying for SBA loans or putting together business plans or financial projections. This is almost step 0 in a process of getting a business ready for funding. We need to have this before we can go on to other steps, or they should have it. Lon says this is a great feeder program. I agree. And we're getting a little feedback on the pricing, but I would argue that if a small business doesn't have at least $1,250 to get their business started and set up, maybe they're not the best prospect for you, because there needs to be enough revenue for us to cover our expenses, and there needs to be enough revenue for you to get paid. So keep that in mind. Charlotte's asking about the no income tax. So let's go back to that. So there are, I think, 7 states in the United States that do not have a corporate income tax. And if you look at those, that can say, depend upon the comparison of what state other states charge, that can save the business a tremendous amount of money. So we're going to provide a unique commercial address that has no corporate income tax. All right, we answered Lon's question. Jeremy's asking about the address at no charge. Well, we own a commercial building. I'm sitting in it right now. And so we will provide a unique address, a unique suite number that is not a post office box. It's not shared, obviously not a residential, to each participant in the startup business package. And so it meets that criteria. So that's what we're providing. So instead of them paying for that, they get it free. And better yet, it also is providing the benefit of being in the geographic area for the Chapman Fund. So I would always encourage, when clients are considering where to start a business, I encourage them to look at corporate income taxes, and I encourage them to look at tax-based funding sources. Those are 2 criteria. Interestingly, a lot of small businesses don't. They think, oh, I'm in New Hampshire, so I should file in New Hampshire. Maybe so, maybe not. Okay. And Jeremy's asking about the lease terms. And so what we'll provide them, and that's a good point, Jeremy, we'll provide them a 1-year lease at no cost. And so the anticipation, it's kind of like an incubator approach. The anticipation is that they'll move on from the the unique commercial address within a year with their own space. But we're going to provide the commercial address at no cost to them for a year. I guess it's here what we're talking about. All right, so we've covered the address, I think. Excuse me. All right, Perry's asking about the credit lines. And so there's 2 types of credit lines. I had a conversation with a gentleman yesterday, and he actually got irate with me, which was interesting, but I'll stick with my story and you can tell me if it makes you mad or not. When we're building business credit for an entity, there's the organic way and the fast track way. The organic way is we start adding trade lines that are relatively easy to get, that can be approved without a personal guarantee. And so that's normally what we would do. That's the presumption. Alternatively, if they want the fast track, so for example, and this is a bit of a distraction, but when we decided to buy this building, I put an offer in on it, and then I went to the Secretary of State, filed the entity name, got that approved, didn't own the building yet, went to the IRS, got the EIN, went to the bank, got the bank account, and then I bought the building in that new entity's name. And then, and this is going to tie to the question, and so then I immediately applied for a $10,000 business credit card. And I actually have it right here. I know we're on a Zoom with no camera, but if you hear me tapping, that is my $10,000 business credit card that I received. So we'll work with the individual client to see. Now that $10,000 business credit card that I just tapped against the microphone, which is real, did require a PG, a personal guarantee, because it's a brand new business versus waiting and building it organically. So Perry's question is a good one. We'll have to work with the client on exactly the composition of that based upon their circumstances and their goals. But we're not getting a power of attorney. We're not pretending to be them. We're not applying for things that they don't want. No worries about that. All right. Lon had nice things to say. And it says he loves it. Thank you for that, Lon. Joseph, and Joseph's always the money guy. I appreciate that. He's asking, how does he make more money from this? Well, I guess, Joseph, if you wanted to mark it up somehow, you can mark it up, Joseph, and make more money. You know what we're looking for to cover our cost. We're looking for 1,000 net, $1,250 less what we're going to pay you. So I guess technically, Joseph, if you want to use your charisma and mark it up and charge the client more, and you're just going to send us the net 1,000 fine with us. Joseph's great. He's a money maker. So yes, if you want to mark it up, that's between you and the client, but you understand our net cost to cover our cost of doing these things. Thank you, Frankie, saying it's a great program. And we'll close on this. Pauline asked a question. How do you pitch this? Well, I think this can be pitched to either individuals that do not yet own a small business and or key influencers. Like I wouldn't go to a chamber of commerce for this because typically chamber members already have a business, right? But in terms of going to churches and community organizations, apartment complexes, there's great groups of people whereby you could reach out to, and they may have a desire to start a business, but they don't know how, and they don't have the funding to pull it off. And you can provide a solution to that. So I think you'd have to define first, Pauline, who your target audience is. Where do you want to pitch this? But please keep in mind, this is a draft, a beta version. We're not enrolling anyone in it yet. We came to you today as our advisory team to let us know, do you think we're on track, or is anything off on this? What needs to be changed before we go to market? Because we want to do it right. Again, we've got Joseph. Joseph wants to make a lot more money than this. But Joseph makes a lot of money normally, so his barrier to get his attention is different than some of you. But this is the pricing model as of now. If you feel like it should be changed, let us know. We can't lose money on each client, so we can't go lower. But if you want to go higher, that's between you and the client. All right. But I guess we'll take one stab at Pauline's point. You know, what we have is a turnkey program to help small businesses set up a new business that is well positioned for fast funding. Everyone that goes through it is going to receive a commercial address at no charge. We're going to get them filed with the Secretary of State at no charge. We're going to provide them an EIN, of course, at no charge. We're going to help them get their first $5,000 to $10,000 of business credit at no charge. And they'll, in fact, even have geographic access to the Chapman fund at no charge. And that provides up to $250,000. So I think that the relevant benefits is labeled here, and then you can edit it as you want. Lon's asking about timeline. Well, the timeline is dependent upon what type of feedback you all give. If you think that we've hit the nail on the head, then we'll be ready to implement just in a matter of a couple of days. If there's major restructuring that needs to be done, then you'll need to let us know. And again, I know that some of you provide similar services now, and that's fine. We don't want to compete with you. So if you're providing this package, then don't make it available to your sphere of influence. We're not here to compete with you. All right. Well, Nikki's got the last question, the last question regarding personal credit. Well, you notice what I just defined. Well, we do have the 60-day credit sweep, but that's not what we're talking about here. But in terms of if someone has jacked up personal credit, notice nothing that we talked about here is dependent upon personal credit. Not at all. Not at all. So the credibility, creditworthiness, we'll say, of the individual plays no bearing in what we talked about. Perry asked so if any of you want to use it and you're referring yourself, right, you can just net it out and just pay the $1,000. There's no reason for you to pay us $1,250 for us to pay you $250 back. So you could do net of $1,000. And yes, we'd love to come out into the community and help you promote this. All right, well, I've ran way long. Thank you for your patience. The COVID symptoms are steadily getting better, so hopefully I'll have less coughs and more energy tomorrow. Have a great day, and we'll see you back tomorrow morning. Bye.